and welcome to Free Thinking Through the Fourth Turning. This is Sasha Stone, and I have a very special guest for our inaugural interview at the Substack, John Nolte, famous writer of novels and screenplays, and the daily writer. Most of you know him from Breitbart.com. Hi, we're so happy to have you, John.
I'm very happy to be here. And I'm honored to be your first inaugural guest.
Yeah, and you might end up being the only guest, but we no, it's I was just telling you that it's surreal to talk to you because I bought your book, Borrowed Time. Actually, I have a hard copy of it, but I also got the audiobook because I tend to read books that way, and I listened to it twice. But the
Wow.
eerie thing about it is talking to you is like your writer's voice is your voice,
Oh,
you
you mean
know?
the way I converse comes across in the book?
Yes, very much
Wow.
so.
Wow. I didn't even know that. No one's ever told me that before.
Even though you weren't narrating it. But the narrator did a great job.
Yeah.
But just sort of the way you are, the way that your language is, I can hear it and I'm like, "Oh wow, okay, that sounds familiar." Yeah, that's the writer's voice in the book.
I get that's a good thing, I'm assuming.
It's a very good thing. Yes. So so we don't, we're kind of just flying blind here, but I think I'd like to ask you about your book, about how, how it came about, how long it took you to write, um, what inspired you to write, and why you're never going to write another book.
Yeah, I can
All of
answer
those.
that. Well, the book started out many, many, many years ago as more of a mental exercise. I don't like to listen to the radio when I'm driving. I like quiet. If I sit outside, I just want to sit outside and not be bothered and with external noise, and I just let my mind wander. So it started out as a mental exercise because I was fascinated with the idea of immortality and what it would be like if it happened to a regular guy, someone like me, as opposed to a vampire or a superhero.
Mm,
How would you deal with that logistically in a world that's closing in on all of us with social security numbers and cameras everywhere? And how would you deal with that emotionally? Because you're gonna outlive everyone. They're gonna get old and they're gonna die, and you're gonna stay the same. But how would you hide? So I just thought about that for a while, and then I came up with the idea that this guy could sell his life. That one way he could make money, I guess in the black market, would be to sell his life, let people kill him. They would pay
mm,
him, and then since that's his renewable resource, he'd just come back. And of course, I had to figure out the rules around that.
mm,
And once I had that idea, I thought, well, this is pretty interesting. And I tried to write it into a screenplay, and not intensely, just every once in a while I'd putz away at it. And I'm not a very good screenwriter because I tried to do that and I didn't do so well. But I did figure out about a quarter of the story, but I always got stuck on the Charlie character because he started, I'm not going to give anything away, I'm going to be cryptic, but he started out as such a cliche, sort of Lennian of Mice and Men, but without the edge, without the danger.
mm.
And I was stuck literally for 5 years. And I just drove me crazy. And I wasn't thinking about writing the book. It was just I couldn't make that better. And I remember I was laying in bed one morning and I was thinking about the story. And I thought, well, your idea about Charlie is so bad. Maybe the opposite of your idea is good. And
Yeah.
that just blew the doors off everything. And then I came up with the Charlie character. And to answer your question, what motivated me to write the book was that when I came up with what I was going to do with the Charlie character, I knew that would drive the book to the end, the story. And I thought, this is such a good idea. I have to write it.
Mhm.
I can't just drop this idea because I've never seen anything like this before. And so I had to I don't even read novels. And I never tried to write in that format before. So I had to teach myself about how to write a book. Um, but that's really what spurred it. Was just I thought, man, you're never going to get another idea this good again. So you got to try and
Mhm.
write it. And that's to answer your third question. That's why I don't think I'll write another book. I just can't come up with another idea that good.
Well, you never know. You might. You've still you've still got a lot of time left, But I think what you do know is you know storytelling because you watch so many damn movies.
Hmm.
You are you're the most prolific moviegoer that I know. You are, I don't know for listeners if you follow John on Twitter, he's always posting about the movies he's watching. Huge collection of films at home. When you're not, on the road camping with your wife, you're watching movies, right? So you know what a good story is just from that.
Yeah, and I also, one of the things that really helped me, uh, at least when it came to the style of the book, because I was so worried about it being a right-wing version of woke. I knew I wanted it to be my worldview, but I didn't want it to be preachy. And nothing, you learn from your mistakes. And because I've had to figure out why movies have gone so wrong of late, that taught me a lot about what to avoid when I was writing the book. That you can't
Mm.
have characters that are solely good. You can't have characters that are solely bad. You need to work in theme, not lectures. You need to you need to give room for the reader to think as opposed to telling them what to think. And I don't think if it hadn't been for this woke revolution over the past 7, 8 years, that the book would have turned out as good because I've had to work so hard to figure out what's wrong, and then I was able to avoid those pitfalls when I was writing it. But yeah, of course, movies had a lot to do with it. I think you can sense the book is kind of a western, and it's it has some my lead character, my protagonist Mason is you're basically Shane, the stoic Western character who's also flawed and slow to violence but capable. So there's a lot of that in there.
Yeah, and you've got like for the people counting heads, you definitely have the, diversity of people and different backgrounds and different skin colors and all that. Not intentionally or obviously so, but it is there. You're not like, I'm gonna write a book with all white characters, that's not what's happening. But people don't know this about you unless they really follow you closely and they pay attention and they don't just go by their own knee-jerk reactions, that you don't fall into the regular pitfalls. In fact, you have no problem standing up to groupthink and I find you hard to pigeonhole, and on Twitter, you seem to be very much an independent thinker in terms of like Trump and politics and art. You sometimes like movies that I cannot believe that you like. And so you to me are you're a lot more open-minded than I have become, that's for sure. And so I think people would assume that that's what your book would be, and they would be surprised. That was what I was trying to get across. Even though I know how people are in my world, I had a guy scream at me just because I did an interview with you, you know.
Yeah, isn't that
Um,
crazy? Yeah, it's I'm the closed-minded one, right? He's the one
yeah,
screaming at
exactly.
you.
I know. I just think it's so funny because look at where it's taken them, like this I guess it's hubris, is that the right word? But it's taken them to such a dark place. This isolated world where they've just become eaten alive by their own fear, of keeping people out of their world, and it's only hurt them, I think.
Yeah, and I think they've so that they don't see themselves as the villains, and so they don't see themselves as the fascists, and they are the fascists. They've convinced themselves that you interviewing me is violence because that's the only thing that they can, the only
Well,
way they can justify their McCarthyism.
right. And they don't know you. They only know what they've been told about the website. That's what I found, is that it's a thing that is baked in that you have, for me anyway, it requires pushing through it. Whenever I'm about to post something or write something, I feel that tug of, wait, don't say that,
Hmm.
don't do that. Don't show them what you think. I have to push through it and just say, damn the torpedoes. Like, yes, say it. And so what? Wait for the next thing that's going to happen. Are they going to yell at you, or are they going to stop advertising with you? What? Um, but I just think that it's not the right answer to tread lightly and to keep this thing going. It's better to just bust through and end it, once and for all, no matter what, even if some people are going to be offended by it.
Yeah, and I think the best way to end it is just defiance, just naked, bald-faced defiance. Because the moment you show weakness, that's when they move in. But if you're just defiant,
Yeah.
they don't really know how to deal with that, and that's always been my approach to it. That doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes and I haven't done things, through that defiance that I wish I had. And as we get older, we get wiser, and but that is definitely one of the keys is just naked belligerence. Because if they think that you're weak, they're like jackals. They'll just come in for the kill.
That's so true. And if they think they have something to hold over you, they will. And once they realize that they don't anymore, then they really do just walk away. Because there's not, what they want is leverage. They want to just be able to make somebody feel bad until they go along with what they want. And if you take that away, if you say, okay, go ahead, just call me a Trump supporter. Just do it. Fine. What else haven't you called me? And then there's nowhere else to go from there except actual violence, I suppose.
Which they're willing to do, as we're seeing.
Yeah, they're willing to do, and probably not going to get any better in the next in the next few months. Um,
Or the next 4 years if Trump wins, it's going to be a nightmare.
yeah, it is, and I don't think people are prepared, not from the right, but from the left. I don't think they're
Right.
fully prepared of what we're about to see happen. Um, but so what is your real life like? I mean, how much time do you spend sort of in the online world? Because I know I don't have a real life, except walking my dogs. And most of my life is online. And so what about you? Is that the case?
Um, Mainly I'm online now because I know I don't want to sound arrogant, but I know what I think now. So I don't find the need to search around for ideas or anything like that. I don't, that used to be something I would do, and I would read National Review or something to try, and now I wouldn't even think about it, but now I'm just looking for content. So I get up in the morning, um, and I'm looking for stuff to read that I can write about, and then I write about it, and then I'm usually done by about noon, 1 o'clock, and then I try to get offline because what I found is that when I was deeply, deeply involved online, it really affected my judgment because I was so involved in the media, and it affected my judgment, and it affected my ability to see things from an outsider level. And
Mm,
once I unplugged and I removed cable news and just cable TV in general, it opened my mind more, and I could look at things more rationally, more objectively, and I could see how crazy it was. Because when you're in the crazy, it doesn't seem as crazy. But when you're out of the crazy and you're just living your life and you're going to the hardware store and you're going to the gas station and you're talking to your mom and you're just sitting on the porch, you can see the crazy is much more crazy. So the reading that I do now is mainly about movies because I enjoy that. So I read you, and I read Jeff Wells, and I read Jordan Rumi, and I read all these other sites because I enjoy that. But
mm.
online, but as far as news and narratives and stuff like that, it just bores me now.
Yeah, right. I know because you know what you're going to get on when I was when my perspective started to shift, I had to cut off. Like I had to really just cut off all input from media because it was really even my timeline, but reading any article, listening to NPR, any of it will absolutely shape your worldview. And it's true on the right as well. If you do go down that road, if you listen to I try to listen to a wide array, but I do find myself having to pull back. I can totally understand what you're talking about with the crazy. I feel like I'm there right now, actually, where I really do
Yeah,
need to just take a step back a little bit and remember that, there is a real life out there.
and that was one of the themes I wanted to put across in the book was the my protagonist, Joshua Mason, he pulled the TV out of his room because he saw it as a sewer pipe. And there's a point where he's wondering why people don't unplug from the mainframe and just get their own ideas about things. And he reads books. And that was an idea that I tried, that's just one of those ideas I tried to get across in the book without beating people over the head with it. and just putting it through this one man's philosophy. But that was, I don't
Yeah.
think I'd have been able to read the book if I hadn't unplugged, because one of the main things I had to do was look at our culture through a guy who's been around for thousands of years. And you're so involved in it and you're so consumed by it. And there was a time when I had five TVs in front of me at one time, all on
Oh
cable
my God.
news, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, BBC, the Al Qaeda station, whatever that one is, Al Jazeera. And
Mm.
but it was being able to unplug that I really was able to just open my mind a little bit. And that I think that helped with the book, and it certainly helped with my life because you even if you're watching Fox News, it's like a football game that never ends. Who's going to win? Who's going to
Mm.
lose? Am I going to get 2 yards today? And then you'll watch Fox News. You get so caught up in a narrative, and it'll consume you, and it'll drive you crazy, and you'll be angry all day. And then by 2 days later, you'll forget what that narrative was about. Oh my gosh, did they force that person to take their flag down in a trailer park in the middle of nowhere that I'll never visit? And they make you care about things that really shouldn't matter to you. You need to focus on your own life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the feeling I got reading your book actually was this wisdom that was coming from this character that was saying, don't sweat in short, don't sweat the small stuff. Pay
Right.
attention to the big picture, the really big picture, the your life is over in 2 seconds, big picture. But the thing he talks about in the book, this thing that he calls, I can't remember the exact word for it, but it's
The
this
all at
thing that his
once.
sort the all at once. Yes, I love that. What is that? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, one of the things I realize is that someone who's been alive for thousands of years, that if you look at history, nothing much changed from the beginning of mankind to about, I don't know, 1900. Animals were used for transportation and flame lit the dark. And I know there were some advances, but for the most part, nothing really changed. It was basically towns and fire and animals. And then all of a sudden, you move into the 20th century, and it's just this explosion that we live in of stuff. It's automobiles and satellites, stuff that a generation earlier would have come off as witchcraft. And we are so lucky to live in this time. I mean, there's a lot of downside to it, but just dentistry is we're lucky for, and medications and all these things. But all at once, we went from nothing changing, thousands, hundreds, thousands of years, to boom, satellites, cable TV, internet. It's just the iPhone, the all this stuff, and smart weapons, and it's just insane how fast it happened. And I just wanted to look at that from someone else's point of view. And then, of course, there's the downside to it, which is mass culture. The way that it used to be, we were atomized as a culture. A little town had their own culture. And I just read a biography of Woody Guthrie, and they talked about how the country went from everybody would get together at night and they'd play their banjos and they'd sing their songs. And then all of a sudden, overnight, everybody's listening to Bing Crosby on the radio. And
Mm.
I like Bing Crosby, but the point is good because you go from your own culture to mass culture, and then this mass culture can brainwash you. It can affect your point of view, and that's definitely not a good thing. Plus, it's closing in on us very slowly. We all got social security numbers. We have to sign these government forms all the time, and it's very hard to stay out of the mainframe because you're always connected to it in some way. It's almost impossible to escape from, and that's something I was able to explore through a guy who was immortal and obviously had to stay hidden for reasons.
Yeah. I just love the idea, the atmosphere of the book is so amazing. It really has this you get the feeling of what I've been trying to zero in on for a while to explain something that I can see that I can't explain, which is I've lived half of my life online, right? I got online in 1993, 1994, right around there. And I basically never got offline. But when you do that, I felt like your main character was living above that. And that there was a definite shift of people out here and then people in here. And I felt like after 2020, we all kind of came in here, in a way that they hadn't before. And that gave, not to sound paranoid, but that seemed to give the government, you know, to state the obvious, so much more power over everyone, right? Talk about the all at once. Like that
Right.
corralled us all into this one area where everybody's tracked now. Everything that they do, their likes, everybody's filmed all like, everybody's filmed all the time. There's probably not many places in this city or, where people are where there isn't a camera trained on you. And it feels like, yes, we have more freedom, but at the same time, we don't have as much freedom because, our behavior, our thoughts is all being watched and judged harshly by the people in power.
Yeah, and then they can manipulate us. It's on Twitter they've got that you can select two feeds, the one with your followers and the one that's called for you.
Mm,
And I noticed that if you just slow down and you watch a video on for you, then you get a ton of videos that'll tell you that. It's the same thing on Facebook. If you're scrolling through and you just stop and look at something, you don't click on it, you don't play the video, but you just stop for a little bit to look at it, it'll feed up more and more. So they're definitely watching us, and there's no doubt that the government is, and maybe Elon Musk is protecting us, but I know that the others aren't. And that's another thing I
mm,
did in the book is I just took that a little bit further with the Kingdom Key, where it's this device that the government has where they can monitor us through every electronic device we have. So if you have a doorbell camera or what do they call it, a Lexus or something, the where you say Alexis, play
mm.
me a song. I forgot what they call it, but
Yeah.
you've got people put these things in their house, and to me, I was just trying to give people a warning that that's you got a microphone in your house, you got cameras all over your house. It is so easy to hack into them, and the government could watch you, monitor. They could even record this stuff and keep it forever, and then go back to it if they want to, because now you can you could hoard so much data. So and then the other part of it that drives me crazy, Sasha, is that we volunteer for it. We allow it. We just because this stuff is so awesome, and I'm as guilty as anyone. But I'm thinking about when I retire, I want to get rid of my phone. But then I see that my phone is connected to everything. I can't
Right.
I can't look at my email without my phone. I can't look at my retirement account without my phone because everything goes through your phone, and you got to put the code in there. You got to select the code in
That's
there.
right. That's so true. They always say that. They never, they always say we're going to send you a text.
Right.
But then they have this emergency alert system that goes to your phone, and now that tells you, okay, they've got access to everybody.
Everybody. And I feel like I'm getting herded. You're herded into this one little area, and we're all going to be in this one little area, and it's all going to be, and we're going to do it voluntarily because and again, I'm not speaking from above anyone. I've got a phone and I'm always on it like everyone else is, but you just feel like you're being herded. And what am I going to do when I retire? If I want to get rid of my phone, I'm going to have to figure out a way to access all this stuff. It's really something.
Well, because like I say, because I've been living online so long, I have an enormous footprint, but it's all ephemeral, right? Like if I die, it's gone. No one's going to know how to look for it. No one's going to care to look for it. It's not like a box of photos, in the closet that my daughter can have. It's this uh data, right? And so I got really paranoid about that because I looked at all my photos and everything and I thought, okay, I've got to deal with this. I've got to bring them into the physical world. But as it is, everything that you think is being, even, all your writing on Breitbart, you've got to, like, that's gonna have to be archived at some point because if that site goes down, all that writing's gone, and then your footprint is gone from that site. That's how temporary it all is. Like my site or Words Daily, if that goes down, 25 years of work, other than on the Wayback Machine, every so often they take a picture, but all that's not archived. It's not a library. We're not living our lives in ways that can be measured and remembered, right? They
That's a great point.
disappear.
Yeah, that's a great point in the future because there's not going to be a record because you don't pay your web fee. It disappears. You
Yep.
don't pay your internet fee. Hosting, I guess. Hosting, they call it.
Yeah, it's gone. I have this old website from 1998 that I put my daughter and me on. I put pictures of her on there with me. Pictures that I can never find, they're gone. And there it's
Oh,
on the way back machine, but the pictures are gone off of it. And I can't find them. And they were so great. And that got me paranoid. And I thought, okay, I have to start printing this stuff and bring it in. And what I thought of was a great idea is to have a site called Legacy, and everybody could buy into a legacy there, and they could have their little life, their whole life on this in this little, safe, protected area where all your online stuff can be saved, your photos,
that's a
from
great idea.
Facebook or yeah, and people could pay for like a lifetime, and so your child would have it would be part of your will. You'd put in
Yeah.
this person has access to my. It's like a safety deposit box, but for the virtual world.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. And I've already had two websites where everything I did disappeared. So it doesn't bother me too much because I'm not the biggest fan in the world of my writing. But if it was
Oh,
family
come
pictures or
on.
something, that would bother me a lot.
Oh, no, you're a great writer, man. You are a great writer. So tell me more about your days in Los Angeles as a screenwriter. It's so fascinating. That would make its own great novel or series or something. Just your adventures.
Well, I went out there, I think I was 37, and we had just paid the house off. And it gave us a little freedom. And I just said to my wife, I'd like to try this because I had written a screenplay, and my brother was already out there. He's an editor. He's a very accomplished editor. And I'm not sure he wants me to say too much more about him, uh, to be associated with me because I don't want to put him
Oh,
in a
come
tough
on.
spot. But and he gave the screenplay. He liked it. He gave it to someone, and that was enough encouragement. So my wife and I, loaded up the truck and moved to Beverly, and we rented a little house in East LA and in the Monterey Park area. And I got I think two screenplays option, which is a pretty big deal. I mean, most people don't
Yeah,
even get that far.
right.
Um, and then one of them got pretty far. I was working with a major director on it. And I don't know if he wants to be named either. I don't want to, guilt by association, but he was wonderful to work with. And he made some great movies and he really liked the screenplay. And then this is a typical Hollywood story. George Clooney made a movie that flopped. I don't know, he was a football player in the 20s or something, and that movie flopped. So that movie flopped. So he completely decided he was going to relook at his career. So the company that had gotten attached itself to my script, they were supposed to make a movie with him. He pulled out, so everything just fell apart. Everything, that's how
Hmm.
it goes, right? So George Clooney ruined any chance that movie had to get made.
Oh man, that
And then
sucks.
uh and I don't think it would have gotten made eventually anyways because it was a family comedy. And then um those went out of style around the same time.
Hmm.
So then I had another script and I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna make this movie. And I'm gonna see how far I could take it before I go down in a ball of failure. And I would talk to people that I had met in the screenwriting world, and I would just say, listen, if I buy you a steak, can I pick your brain for an hour? How do I make this movie? And that ended up being a wonderful, wonderful experience. And one guy I was talking to said, well, send me the script. I want to see the script. So I sent him the script and on a Friday, and on Monday, this independent producer says, I want to make this movie. So we made the movie. And it took about a year to make. And I directed it, which was a huge mistake because I have no eye whatsoever. Um,
Hmm.
and it got into a couple of festivals, and there were real actors in it, like Keith David and John Schneider and Cynthia Gibb. And I had a wonderful time. It was a wonderful experience. And everybody worked their butts off to make that move, to do what I wanted to do, the producers, everyone. And it just didn't turn out very good. And then the economy crashed in 2008, and it just had no chance. Um,
Hmm.
so things were so bad then that I seriously had, I'm not trying to create mythology here. I had applied for a job at Ralph's, which is a grocery store. because I had no prospects and I was doing this little film website and making a little money on that, but I just had to get a job. And I had an interview at Ralph's, and then Andrew Breitbart out of the blue called me, and he knew what I was doing online. And it was just that classic movie moment where a guy's hit bottom and someone comes along and plucks him out of nowhere and changes his life. It was unbelievable. And that's why I'm here
Wow.
today, because of Andrew Breitbart.
Wow, that's incredible. Because he was in Hollywood. He was in Hollywood in the early days, right?
Yeah, he lived in he as far as I know, he's always lived in Brentwood. He lived in Brentwood area.
But he was in the business, in the film business, I thought, wasn't he?
Oh, I'm
Or did he
sorry. I
start?
thought you meant physically. Yes, I think he did. I think he was, yeah, some sort of something. He would drive scripts around and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, he was involved in it. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't. I only know like peripherally because I listened to Steve Bannon to Steve Bannon's podcast, and he talks about it. You know, he talks about the old days, and I would love to do to write a script or a book or something about those early rock and roll days. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
beginnings of Breitbart, Drudge, and Steve Bannon, and all that. I think it would be so fascinating to
Yeah,
do.
like a Bad News Bears type of story.
Bad News Bears type of story, these kind of outsiders
Yep.
who are, you know, in my opinion, my ability to predict the future are about to become the dominant culture because I feel like there's a pendulum swinging and things are about to shift dramatically. And I feel like that ragtag group of people is about to become like much more mainstream and not outside. It's a whole different vibe to not be the outsider anymore. In some ways, it's more fun to be, you know, the bomb thrower, you know what I mean? And not the mainstream culture, but I feel like that's where it's going.
Yeah, I've had
Uh,
it's a lot more fun when I know it's not good for the country, but as far as with what I do, it's a lot more fun being on the outside because you don't have to defend, you just attack. And
I know you do that so well. You're really good at like you really can slice and dice, honestly, like nobody else. So how did he know you're writing? What was your website? Do I remember it? Did we ever exchange? Did we know each other at all at any time? Because we've
no,
both
I
been
don't think. I
online.
mean, I always followed you because you were following the Oscar stuff. Um, and I don't have to agree with someone to enjoy what they write. I don't agree with much of what Jeff Wells does, but he's a great writer. And
Mm,
but no, it was called Dirty Harry's Place, and it was just I looked at film from a conservative point of view. But one of the reasons that Andrew chose me out of, there were lots of people he could have chosen, but he liked the fact that I was, a Christian conservative who did not want to censor movies. I wasn't, because a lot of people at that time that were writing online, and I'm not criticizing them. There's certainly a debate to have about too much sex and violence in movies, but that was the
mm.
main focus. It was there's too much sex and violence in movies, and Andrew liked me because I like sex and violence in movies. I'm pro sex and violence, and he liked the fact that I didn't want to censor movies in any way. I didn't want to shut the left out. And he liked the fact that I'd worked in Hollywood at some level, even though it wasn't very impressive, and the fact that and I knew about movies. I take them seriously as an art form. I don't just watch them. So that was the reason why at least he told me that he wanted me to run Big Hollywood, which was the first site he opened that became the
Right.
Breitbart News.
Yeah, because that you're so right that like I mean, I was extremely left. People might not realize that, but that like to a ridiculous, embarrassing degree. But I know that Jeff wasn't always he wrote for I think a site that was sort of conservative adjacent at one point early on in his career. I certainly thought at the time that he was a conservative. But yes, we were right that on my side, people on the left have always been exclusionary in that way. You know, that's a line you don't cross. But now, of course, they are crossing it because they have no choice. But throughout most of my life, especially in film coverage, it was, you know, conservatives over here, liberals over
Hmm.
here, and never the twain shall meet, unless you're talking about somebody like Clint Eastwood, you know, Mel
Yeah, someone
Gibson.
who's
There are,
grandfathered in.
yeah, and he was grandfathered in, and when the hate machine started on the left, he became pretty quickly became a target too. Um, I remember even on my side, people were screaming about Clint Eastwood being a conservative, and that just that alone was enough to say, you are a bad person. And it only got worse, of course, when Trump won, but it was always kind of like that, in a way. So
Yeah, it
I
was.
apologize for my ignorance.
Yeah, I mean, and I was the same way though when during the Bush years. I was the same way when it came to people that, and I'm embarrassed by who opposed the Iraq War. I was the exact same way. I was totally caught up in that neocon mindset. And like I said, you get older and you learn and you become a little wiser and you realize that you don't want young people in charge because you were young once and you know that all the mistakes that you made. So believe me, there's that's one of the reasons I'm not upset that those websites have disappeared because I was so strident and I was just, so sure of myself. And then I ended up being so
Yeah.
wrong.
I'm so humiliated by that. But you can find your website. It's there. It's on the Wayback Machine if you ever go looking for it. You'll find old pages of it, which I find really, and even old Twitter is on there.
Really?
Yeah, just go to
Oh,
Wayback, just type into Google Wayback Machine and then type
yeah.
in your URL and it'll take you back. It doesn't keep everything. It keeps like maybe a snapshot every month or so. But it's nice to just know that it's there, that there is a record of it, and the footprint, and I deleted all my tweets I had like 100,000 tweets as a very democratic person, and I totally deleted them all. But some of them still live on Wayback Machine. I'm sorry to
And of
say.
course, some hater can always find one.
Yes, that's why you can't. That's the thing I've learned, even though my Twitter is still locked down. But the thing I've learned in the past few years is that you have to be ready to just live out there, live out loud, as they say, and
Yeah.
because someone's going to find it. And if they have any power over you to expose you, which they would do, they did that to me when I had that Netflix show. They sent a bunch of tweets to them to say, this is what a bad person that you are hiring and working with. And
Is that when you were doing the show for Netflix?
yeah, I was
Yeah,
working with
it's just
what,
gross.
and it was so long ago too now. Like it was, we were doing it in 2018. Um, and then it didn't show until by the time that the thing came out in 2021, everything had changed. Because
Hmm.
between 2018 and 2021, there was 2020. And so we had this thing that was referring to the industry the way it was, not the industry that it became. And it would have been a totally different series if, everybody, as you know, they just want to play it too safe. Like that's the thing is they can only handle in this mainstream, they can only handle so much hard truths before they back off and get scared. I'm not saying he
Just
was scared or anything, but
yeah, no, but he can't fund it himself. But
right.
just they cannot let one person get over the wall. You just can't. They can't.
That's right.
Not one I mean, you look at the media today, and there's no one. There's just no one. You're never going to find a Trump supporter on MSNBC, and they turn everyone. You either get shot out of the cannon. Sorry, you're not allowed here. You're blacklisted, and they'll find a reason to boot you off. They'll make something up, like CNN did to a couple of Trump supporters, or they'll turn you into Joe Scarborough, who was a guy who was a populist Republican when he first started on MSNBC, and now he's basically, Rachel Maddow with a penis. And there's no, he's just a blob now. There's nothing there. There's nothing interesting about him anymore because everybody just follows the same line. And that's another thing I discovered with the media is that it's just boring because it's so predictable.
Mm. Yeah, you're right when you say that it's like a football. Like every day there's a war about the narrative. Like this piece of information drops into the churn and then everybody has to fight over it. And who wins the day gets to be the person who wins, right? And so they just Scarborough and nobody should get themselves in this trap. And I've been in this trap too many times, so I'm just not speaking like you say. I'm not saying I'm above this. I am definitely somebody who gets caught up in it, but you don't want to be that person where that's all you do all day is fight that war because, sometimes you're going to be the dog that caught the car and you're not going to know what to do with yourself once you've
Hmm.
won that, you know? And then what are you? You're just doing nothing. You're like CNN, you're just passing time. trying to bring people in by scaring them to death every day, you know?
And that's exactly right. And then it affects people to a point where, they're at the grocery store and they're like, I got to get back and see what's going on. It's always on their mind. And I remember my mom's a left winger, and every time I talked to her, she was always watching MSNBC. And I told her, I
Mm.
said, Mom, this is ruining your life because this is all you care about. You think this stuff matters, and I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. You think it does, but it doesn't. And just for a couple of years, I would talk to her about that. And then finally, I don't know, I think it was last year, she started watching old westerns on the
Mm.
Roku channel. And one day she said to me, I'm so glad I took your advice. I'm so much happier today. And she's still, Obama's biggest fan, and she's still going to vote for Joe Biden. But she just discovered that life, she was just happier to turn that stuff off and live her life. And she wasn't missing anything because 99% of what's in the news media, it doesn't matter in the long run. Sure, 9/11 matters and Ukraine matters and things like that, but most of it's just nonsense.
Before our time is done, I want to pitch something to you, an idea, and we can volley it around at some point. But I think that Borrowed Time is too good to just be a book that's done and over. I think you should, not me. I mean, I'd be happy to be involved, but turn it into a podcast, a narrative podcast with readers and actors. These are so popular right now. Everybody's listening to them, especially ones like this that have a horror element. And this area of, you don't even, I mean, I don't think Borrowed Time is necessarily a conservative book, but
Mhm.
there is a black hole of content that needs to be filled for that audience that just doesn't exist. Everything is, as you know, geared toward a certain mindset. And so what we're living on right now, what we're living through, and I only know this from doing the Oscar race for 25 years and be able to look ahead and predict what a consensus is going to do. But I can feel it. I can just feel it. Like this is the moment when it's time to start dropping stuff in that is going to fill up a vacuum, right? An emptied out space. And so I think personally that Borrowed Time would be a great one of those. My daughter listens to them all the time. Her generation devours them. And they're like old time radio shows. You know, they
I
have
was going to
sound
say, are you
effects.
talking about something like a radio show with sound effects and different
Yeah.
actors playing different roles and the
Yes,
narrator?
exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
very interesting idea. That's a really
Season
good
one.
idea,
Yeah,
actually.
you can divide it up into chapters. It wouldn't be too hard. All you would really need to do is actually, I'm talking like about something I don't know anything about, but I would assume that all you would have to do is, either work with people at a place, time and place, or get funding,
Hmm.
talk to someone who might want to start a production company of doing this, give you some seed money and set it up so that, it wouldn't be that hard. Like Daily Wire is doing, they do that cartoon that they're about to put out with.
Hmm.
That's a different thing because it's for watching, but podcasts are huge right now. That area is exploding, I think, with interesting things, and that would be a place for it to gain a new audience and to reach people. It's just
That's a really
made for
interesting
that.
idea. It really is. Yeah. And just maybe that is. I mean, I cannot see ever it turning into I don't think it would work as a movie, but maybe it's like a limited series. I can't see that ever happening because, it's me and it's Breitbart. But that'd be something you could do probably at a fairly fairly low budget, a reasonable budget, and just see what happens. That's actually a really good idea. You planted a seed.
If it isn't movies, which I think it could be pitched to Angel Studios too to be made as a movie. I think it'd
It
make a
might be a
great
little
movie.
too might be a little too R-rated for them.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't watched everything they've done. I think they're great. I think they've think they're doing great stuff. But no, you planted a seed. That's an interesting idea, and a
Yeah,
radio
it
show
does.
would be.
It does have sex and violence, but I'm telling you, so what, right? Rated R. There's got to be, this is a moment though, because everybody's seen what Sound of Freedom did. and they see that the eyeballs are all going to Fox, and they see that Tucker Carlson gets millions of views. They're not
Hmm.
that stupid that they would ignore what they see as a need for this. Like what, Andrew Breitbart said, as everybody knows, politics is downstream from culture. And and what they're lacking on the right is at the moment culture, because they were abandoned by the left, just
And we,
abandonment. And
and we also shoot ourselves in the foot because, guys like me and Christian Toto and Kyle Smith, we're unicorns. I mean, we're people who take movies seriously, but most people on our side just don't. And I'm not criticizing them, but there's just something different about people on our side of the aisle, on the right side of the aisle. They're more interested in sports and faith, and they have their own interests and they consume culture, but it's just not something that interests them. And I thought the Passion of the Christ, which is 20 years old now, would really create a explosion. Um, but and there has been a lot of stuff post Passion of the Christ, but I mean, let's face it, not much of it has been very good. None of it's been very memorable. Um, and I just thought it would, we'd see, but here we are 20 years later, and I give Angel Studios big credit because not only was The Sound of Freedom a very good movie and a memorable movie, but that show, The Chosen, is just fantastic.
mm,
And they they seem to have cracked the code. So I hope there's a lot more that comes out of them. But I write this book and it turns out pretty good and it gets a real publisher. And again, I'm not criticizing anyone, and I knew this was going to happen, but there just isn't that much interest. Um, no one, the publishers tried to get me out there, and there just wasn't any interest. Even people who are, and again, I'm not criticizing anyone because they all have their own things to do. And plenty of people come to me and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And I can't. But that's just one of the problems on our side. It's just a lack of interest. They'd much rather talk about, Trump's poll numbers than about some
right.
novel about a immortal guy. And the left is totally different, and they understand exactly the power of this stuff. And I always wonder, if I work for Politico, would I have a chance of same book, but would I have a chance of it getting made? Would I have a chance of it getting optioned somewhere? Because I'm a
Oh,
Breitbart guy, I'll never know. And that's the blacklist. The blacklist isn't, oh, if I worked at CNN, they'd make a movie out of my book. That's not the blacklist. That's whining. But the
mm.
blacklist is, I don't know. I don't know if it's good enough. And I'll never know because I'm a Breitbart guy, and that's the shame of it.
Well, that's the shame of it, but it's going to be, I hope both of us are around to see it when the worm turns, because the worm always turns, and these are not the good guys in history. These are the bad guys, always
Indeed.
the bad
Yes.
guys. So it's their loss, and it is a great book, and it would make a great movie, and it would make a great series, and they're stupid for not picking it up because the crap that they put out is unwatchable, most of it. Um, but you're right that they're like that. I just saw that movie Civil War, which is not good, I didn't think. But I saw these people on Twitter saying that they wouldn't watch it because the director used some footage from Andy No. And they hate Andy No, so they're not going to see his movie because
Ah,
there's some footage in there.
I mean, can you imagine being that close? And then they think they're the good guys, and they're that
Right.
close-minded, they're that intolerant, and they think they're I mean, Spike Lee and Oliver Stone drive me crazy, but they're two of my favorite directors. I mean, not in the last 10 or 15 years or so, but those guys are geniuses, and I cannot imagine closing my mind to the point. And I'm going to go see Civil War tomorrow, so I can't comment on that. But to the point where I would lose, access to all this fantastic art just because I thought that the director said something that offended me. And I think that's one of the benefits of being on the right side of the aisle is that the culture is so against you in so many ways that you get a thicker skin. And the culture coddles and patronizes the left, and their skin is so thin that
Mm,
just a mere video from Andy Ngo, oh no, I can't watch it. I can't cope. I can't deal with that. What a way to live.
yeah. What a way to live. I would never, ever. I mean, don't they read history? Don't they remember the old days of what societies are like when they become that choked off. Like it's crazy. But I'd be curious to hear what you think about. I have a feeling you're a lot more tolerant of a movie viewer than I am. So you'll probably like Civil War. But maybe we can do another interview and we'll talk about it after if you have time.
Yeah, sure, of course. I'm hoping to see it tomorrow night. I'm gonna go see the Thursday night showing, and I'm hoping there's a lot of sex and violence.
There's no sex, I
Of
don't think.
course.
There's no sex. No, this is, I mean, this is, you know what this is, right? This is
No, I
not.
do, I do, I do. But that's something I miss in modern movies is how sexually,
There,
unless it's gay sex, of course, but they're so sexually sterile.
gay sex. Well, if there was any sex in this movie, it would be gay sex. But
Oh,
there's a lot of violence, and honestly, I hate to be that person, but it is the best part of the movie is the violence.
it's always the best part of the movie.
Um, yeah. So unfortunately, our interview is coming to a close, but it was very, very nice to talk to you. And I hope that everybody listening to this buys your book if they don't have it already, just to read it if you want to enrich your soul
Oh,
and
that's
learn
nice of you.
something.
You've been so great about this. I appreciate it so much.
Oh yeah, well, I'll put a link in the notes for this. Hopefully I'll have this posted tonight and people can listen to it and I hope that we can find a way to turn this into a podcast. If it isn't picked up by a movie studio, which I still hope that it will be. We should do an experiment and write it as a screenplay and put a different name on it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, wouldn't that be something?
yeah. All right. Well, so when's your next camping trip?
We are gonna go camping sometime in May. We're gonna be gone for about a month between May 15th and about I think June 10th. Because we always have to
Wow.
get in between, yeah, we always have to get in between my wife's doctor's appointments. So we have to juggle
Hmm.
everything and do that. So, but we do that all the time. We usually take a month-long trip every year, sometimes 2 months.
Do you know where you're gonna go?
Yeah, we're gonna go up, visit my folks in Wisconsin and visit her folks in Chicago. And then
Nice.
just take our time going up and take our time coming back.
Very nice. I'll be on the road too all the month of May, driving out to Ohio to see my daughter and then coming back. I love that. But
Have a good trip.
yeah, you too. And I hope your wife is doing well. Is she doing okay?
She is, yeah, she is. She's doing much better. We went on a camping trip last month. She had to see her doctor, but we just turned it into a camping trip. And it was the first trip she's been on where she could just relax and she wasn't in pain and she could just sit up front and read a book like she used to do it the first time in 10 years. So it was
Mm,
a very special time, and I'm hoping this is going to be another one like that.
I hope so too. Enjoy yourself and we'll talk soon, maybe about this movie if we if we can figure it out.
Yeah, that'll work. I'd love that. Thank you.
All right, talk to you soon.
In the depths of silence, where echoes remain, you were the sunrise, and I was the rain. A collision of souls, opposing in flight. I was the darkness, you yearned for the light. Now you're gone, and I'm losing my mind, losing my mind, I'm losing my mind. Now you're gone. Why did you cut me up, bring me out, and leave me high and dry? You were the laughter that kept me alive. You were hello, and I was goodbye. An ember that flickered, that faded away. You were the summer, I was that same old shit in me. Now you're gone, and I'm losing my mind, losing my mind, losing my mind. Now you're gone. Why did you cut me up, bring me out, and leave me high and dry? kept me alive. I said, hold on. You said goodbye.